So, welcome. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm excited to get to know you, and I'm sure the people that are listening are also very excited to get to know you as well. So, would you mind introducing yourself, telling us about you and what you do right now?
Thank you, Yanta, for inviting me to your research. It was my pleasure participating in this research, which is very exciting. I'm Roksana. I'm based in Sydney, and I am affiliated with Central Queensland University. I joined project management, or I started teaching project management back in 2017 as a casual academic. Right after finishing my master's in engineering management, um, I started teaching casually at Central Queensland University, and I started my PhD at the same university in 2019 in project management as well. Especially, I looked at how project management students' competencies can be improved by designing an authentic group-based assessment. While teaching at Central Queensland University, I have also been teaching at other Australian universities like the University of Technology Sydney, which is UTS, and the University of Sydney. Right after finishing my graduation or achieving my PhD degree back 6 months ago, which is July 2023, I joined CQUniversity as a full-time project management academic. And in my profession, I'm a balanced academic where my role is in both teaching as well as research. My teaching has predominantly been on the postgraduate level. That means I deal with mostly postgraduate project management students, different project management subjects. I also I also supervise some research students, but they are not PhD research students. They are coursework research student, like some research element while doing coursework study. My research interest, of course, improving project management graduates' competencies, especially the soft ones. I also work in the different socio-cultural, socio-behavioral aspect like leadership, teamwork. Some of my research has been on that space. Recently, I developed much interest in sustainability and ESG space. I also do some work in women retention in construction projects. So that's briefly me.
That is an amazing breadth of research topics that you're doing, and my mind is already spinning with all of the potential research we could do together because there's some overlap because I study student success in terms of, project management careers, project management identity. I'm also doing, currently I'm working with someone on research about young professionals' attitudes about certifications and volunteerism in professional associations. So we might want to talk about that too offline because that sounds, something you might be interested in as well. So you said you came in. So could you explain to us what a casual academic is?
Okay, so casual academics in the context of Australia is where you are not given a full-time contract to full-time contract means sometimes full-time could be fixed-term contract where when you have fixed-term 2 years contract or you have a continuing full-time contract. So casual academic doesn't fall into either of these categories. Casual academic means you don't have any commitment or you are not given any contract by the university. However, you are given teaching allocation per term. In Australia, we call it term. Some universities have 2 terms, some universities have 3 terms, like Central Queensland universities have 3 terms. So probably you are asked in term 1, 2023, are you available to teach this subject? The days are this, time is this. So you being a casual academic, probably were working in the industry full time, or probably you were just starting your career in academia, or you are a PhD student requiring some, casual employment in order to gain your teaching experiences. So that's casual employment means, but your employment in term one does not necessarily roll over to the next term. So that's casual employment.
Okay, so in the United States, I think the equivalent term would be adjunct, sort of an
Okay.
adjunct instructor, where they just teach per course. They're just per course faculty, and they're not consistently teaching. So I think that sounds like it. Okay. Yes, and I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, that's kind of where they want to start. Is I want to teach project management. I don't know where to go. I don't have a PhD, but so how do I get in there and getting into teaching in that space? So what did you have to do to start? Because it sounded like you were a casual academic and then you started your PhD after. Is that correct? So what kind of qualifications or experience did you have to provide to be able to teach as a casual academic when you first started?
All right, so that's a bit of interesting story. Um, um, Having said that, before I explain that, most of the universities, casuals are now universities are wanting industry professionals to come and teach, because students sometimes, we researchers and people in the academia, we really talk research based and academia based, unless we are backed up with wealth of industry experiences, and then but sometimes people lack that. So universities wanting industry professionals to come and teach, so they get those real life project management experiences, and they talk, when they teach, they talk from their experiences. So that's most of the universities attraction have been in recent days. So when I started my before I started, actually, I came to Australia as an international student back in 2015 with no intention to join academia or do PhD whatsoever. I just wanted to do a master's degree. After that, I wanted to join industry in any project management role. However, once I completed my degree and I had a bit of good scores, and then some of my professors at the university, they recommended me, why don't you start teaching casually at the university? And it was like, because when I was an international student, I was still doing casual work outside in order to source my food and things, accommodation, etc. So they told me, they advised me, as you have good scores at different subjects, and we can give you a recommendation later, and then why don't you apply for that? And I literally laughed at them that time, that oh, what you are talking about. And then one of my professor, actually, he himself drafted an email for me and said that, Roksana, you read this email and then send it to that particular person within the university, and I'm sure she will be helpful. I just said, okay, let me give it a try. And I just laughed at myself, and I felt like they will think, what you're thinking about? You just graduated and you're thinking being a casual academic. And then I actually expressed my interest being a tutor, because in Australia we have two things. One is a lecturer who lectures. Another one is tutor who does tutoring, not lecture. So tutor's role is bit lower level than a lecturer. Not all tutors can be a lecturer, but all lecturers can be a tutor. So then I said, okay, I wanted to be a tutor. And then apparently the lady just replied me, yeah, you are invited to participate in an interview at the Sydney campus on this day. I said, wow. And then I went to the interview, and I went to the interview, and then I was hired apparently. And if you ask me what was the reasons for hiring, I think it was not only just the academic grade, but also the process of understanding universities and students, how to deal with them, their communication, and then the way of empathizing students, all of those things. Because I was never asked a technical question like, can you tell me how do you do scheduling, how do you do some sort of costing. I was not asked. So I thought, and then I started teaching, and as a tutor, and I started teaching. And then soon I realized that in order to be, and then I started loving teaching. And I forgot about joining an industry role or something like that. And I thought that being a female, and it would be good to, because in teaching we have lots of flexibilities. Like you come to teach whenever your teaching is. You don't have to follow it 9 to 5, clock. And then I started loving it. And then soon I realized in order to survive in academia, I need a PhD degree. Because without PhD, I can be casual forever, but I can never be a full-time academic.
Yes.
And that actually prompted me to enroll in PhD. And then and meanwhile, I've been teaching other leading universities in Sydney, because I always have an interest to see how they teach, what they do, because of course they're world-class universities. And but CQU actually offered me a full-time role soon I graduated, so I'm here.
Awesome. That sounds like a wonderful path, very similar to the path I took. So you get an idea to teach, you start teaching, and you're like, wow, this is really cool, and you really enjoy it. You get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I want to do this full time. And so that's kind of how you decide to get an advanced degree and stuff.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot. And I think that's a common path. And we have a lot in common already, I can tell.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
that's wonderful. So you mentioned how much you enjoy working with the students. What are the other biggest joys you have? Like, why do you get up every morning and spend your time planning, teaching, grading, dealing with students? I mean, why do you do that? What do you get out of that?
I think, of course, one of the elements is you are spreading knowledge. And what you are trying to pass on to others. You are just not holding that. Knowledge dissemination is very important, I believe. And as an academic, that is one of our responsibility, that we teach and share our knowledge with others. One of the other things I enjoy about teaching is it's not only I teach, I also learn a lot from them and from the questions they sometimes ask me. So that is also another thing I like. And the third thing, but very important, the respect, love, and compassion I get from students, that actually is my driving force, because I have very, very good time in my past 6 years of teaching with my students. And I think the connection I can make with student is so strong. And then I can just really, I feel that I can dissolve that barrier of traditional being a teacher and student. That's sort of fun and enjoyment in the class, and then how they embrace me. That's also one of the driving force. And last thing is, I would say that as I am in research, I think what I'm getting out of research, I can really talk to the students because I feel teaching is informed by research. I really, um, I'm not quite in favor of just teaching scholar role because I think that's sort of a black hole and then you just stay there forever. Teaching is really for me is informed and transformed by research, and then um, um, I think that is important for me to tell students this is happening in the recent space, and then this is happening, this you can improve, and then you can, you know, you can bring that and you can develop that skills when you join the industry. So I think that's golden thread across everything happening. So it's not one factor, it's a combination of many factors.
Yes. So are there any struggles or things you wish were different about your teaching and academic experience? Like if you could change the world in terms of what we do as professors, teachers, researchers, what would it be? Okay, go ahead.
So, did you mention the struggle I face when
Yeah.
it comes to
Yeah.
teaching? Okay. Um, One of the struggles I face is because I deal with a very different cohort. This cohort at Central Queensland Universities is mostly international based. 95% of our students coming from Asian countries. Like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Bhutan, Philippines. So these are international students, and their education system is quite different than the education system in Australia. The reason I can say, because I come from the same education background, where sometimes education is much more, memorizing driven and then question answer, but in Australia education is much more argument development, rational critical thinking. You just don't memorize and write two questions. You are given a case study, you understand the case study and write from your understanding. So I think the education system is one of the barriers. Students in the first term especially, they really don't want to understand that this is different. They can't just cut paste things, and sometimes students students do these things where they don't paraphrase, then copy paste, and they don't provide referencing. And when it comes to writing, they really don't understand assessment specification, because it's not their fault, it's where they are coming from, because their education system is quite different. So passing that is a bit difficult. And also knowledge wise they grab quickly. That's not a problem, because mostly they are engineers or did their IT or information technology. But in project management, interestingly, we get students from different streams, especially in my subject, which is an introduction to project management. Other day, we have got some students who did their bachelor in political science, bachelor in something, bachelor in tourism. They're all coming to study project management, because of course project management applies in every sector. So that sometimes been challenging to make them understand what project is and how it happens, and they have really very shallow understanding of the concept.
Mhm.
So that is one of the challenges. And another challenge, as I mentioned, that they lack knowledge in terms of referencing, paraphrasing, and then generative AI added a different layer of complexity on all of these things. So
Yes.
yeah, these are the two massive challenges I can recall.
Well, you're not alone, because even here in the United States, we have extreme difficulty getting students to learn how to paraphrase. So we require them to take classes where they learn it, but by the time they get to
Yeah,
the project management class, they have forgotten all about it. And so
yes,
citations, paraphrasing, the use of generative AI, those are issues that affect, I think that's a global thing.
yeah,
And it may have to do with educational systems, but in the US, it's the same problem. And actually, the university here, we just had a big case with a student who was accused of using generative AI for a paper and was given a 0 on an assignment. She lost her scholarship and she got interviewed by the New York Post, and it's been a huge, big deal. So yes, generative AI and student learning and student responsibility is like the next big thing that we're going to have to work on. And if my IRB had approved it, I would have been able to interview you and ask you your opinion about the use of generative AI, but I
oh,
I can't do it because I don't have anybody in Australia who's part of my research team. So if that's something you're interested in researching, then
of
we can
course.
talk about that and maybe get your IRB involved and we can start asking the faculty in your area about that
Yep,
because
sure.
it's a fascinating area about what students are doing and how faculty are responding to it. Um, so yeah, so I'll probably cut that part out, but that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so were you ever taught how to teach? If not, how did you learn to teach? And how do you find materials to teach with?
Okay. That's also an interesting question. Um, all project management not project management, all academics in Australia, I think they're supposed to do some sort of graduate certificate in teaching, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
They're supposed to do, they should do. And I have seen my colleagues being doing them. So I haven't had an opportunity to do that as yet because I was not full-time employed by the universities. Usually universities pay for that. So as I wasn't full-time employed, so I did not get that opportunity to do that as yet. And I've been on my role for just about 6 months. So probably that is one of the things which I would have to do down the road. Now, that's all academics in Australia, especially the full-time academics. But I'm not sure about the casual academics requirements as to whether they would have to. I don't think so. It's a mandatory requirement for casuals to have some sort of certification. If someone have them already, just by as a voluntary act, that's awesome. But many of the casual academics try to impress the employer with their past teaching experiences or their current teaching experiences at different universities. I would say, okay, I've been already teaching at X, Y, and Z, so I can also do for you kind of things. Um, with regards to my experience, uh, okay, I wasn't formally trained to teach. However, before I started as a tutor, when I was hired, I was also given permission to observe other senior academics lecture and tutorials,
Mhm.
how they do, what they do. And then I probably had a couple of sessions with them. And as I said that we start from tutorial, then lecture. So I spent quite a bit of time, if not, I can't recall, but maybe two years or so, just tutoring. I wasn't allocated to any lecture. That is probably for two reasons. Of course, one, I wasn't having my PhD degree as yet, and also probably I was still being trained, doing the tutor, and I appreciate that, and I think that was good for me because I did not have any formal qualification to sort of teach. So that is one of the techniques I followed, and of course I was supervised by many mentors along the way, especially who actually guided me. Okay, apply for this role, start doing casual. They have been quite helpful, and then sort of surrounded me with their advice. Any sort of things I'm stuck, I could make a call and then ask for their help. They have been really helpful in my early career.
Okay. Well, you are not alone. I was never taught how to teach adults either. I remember my first teaching experience. It was crazy because I didn't know anything about, lesson plans or how to engage like Socratic, conversations or questioning or in-class activities. All of that stuff I sort of learned on my own, right? Before when I was teaching as a adjunct. And then even in my PhD program, my cohort was the first group to actually have a teaching training 1 semester, but they hadn't done that before, and I don't know if they did it since. And that is rare, right? It's a lot of times we get that technical knowledge and then we're like, yeah, let's teach. And they're like, here's the
Oh
material,
no,
go teach it,
I
right?
I don't think so. It's a technically quite expert and talented person can be a good teacher. I really don't think so, because I think the dynamics you create with their students is not based on your technical expertise. It's based on your social part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think yeah.
So if a project manager who didn't have the technical expertise but did not get the formal training, do you think that they could rely on their leadership and interpersonal skills to help them be a better teacher? Or would you recommend that they sort of figure out like the best practices in teaching adults and maybe get a certification or training in that before they try to teach?
Um, could you please repeat your question?
So do you think the leadership and interpersonal skills that project managers have, is that enough to be able to go into the classroom and teach effectively? Or are we really trying to recommend that they get some sort of training or skills development in actual teaching of adults?
Okay. Um, I think it would vary with the person to person. If a professional from the industry have good leadership communication skills, and of course they know the technical part of it, and they have been quite successful with dealing with different stakeholders in the industry space, i
Mhm.
I would assume that they would be okay to deal with the students. And I have seen from my experiences, because in my team I have 10 casual academics, and some of them work in the industry, and I see their feedback given by the student, and they are quite good. And but that does not generalize to all professionals, but in general I would assume that if someone has better communication leadership skills and performing well in their organization, they would be okay to teach um, in the classroom with adults. With regards to the certificate, I think it's more on them, because they really don't want to have teaching as a career. They want to just use teaching. Some people use it to, as an enjoyment. Some people use it to pass on their experience to students. Some professionals use it to grab graduates so that they can be employed and they can be source of reference. There are some great human beings in the world too. And some people use them as a source of additional income.
Yeah.
So, and in Australia, I don't think so. For casual, it is a mandatory act to have teaching certificate. So I don't think so. Unless it is a mandatory act, no one would really think of having one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but if university said, okay, your casual employment will be terminated if you don't have one, probably you will get a lineup of academics doing it as soon as possible to do that.
I think we would scare people into doing that. Yes.
Yes. But
Wonderful.
I have seen people doing good job if they have better human skills. I think
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yes, I think so too, because we are teaching humans, right?
Yeah.
And they are our key stakeholders. So that whole stakeholder
Yes.
engagement could probably be a
Yeah.
very good transferable skill for that. So,
Oh, yes, absolutely.
all right, thank you. So, final question. What recommendations do you have for aspiring project management instructors? What are some things that you would suggest that people do if they want to embark in that casual or adjunct teaching role?
Um, is it just applicable for casual or
Or full-time, whatever. You can,
full
yeah.
time? Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. First thing, I think uh, what is important uh, for someone wanting to be coming to academia, I think one of the most important things would have to have the uh, the mindset of listening and mindset of having compassion with students. That is, I think, one of the important things, because from my experience, I have seen that if you have good student teacher dynamics, you can achieve the star. Like, students will do whatever you want them to do. So that connection, if that connection is missing, I think an academic will terribly fail in that space. And if you want to have a good relationship with your with your students, or would like to have, I think that barrier of being traditional professor or teacher, that thing would have to disappear from their sphere. Because I think it's important to, yes, you should have some balance, but you should be open to students, students questions, queries. Students should not feel awkward, and then students should not feel afraid of asking you questions. So you need to open up and say, okay, you can ask me anything, and we are all here to learn. If you ask me any question, no question is a silly question. If you can ask me a question, if you ask me something which I may not know even, I will definitely get back to you. I think that dynamic, if that dynamic is created in the in the classroom, a lot of things, positive things can be achieved. Another thing, second thing, is communication is very, very important. I, being the unit coordinator in my team, I have project management academics who are industry professionals who are having 20, 15 years of teaching experiences, whereas I have just 6 and 7. But I think what is important, being an academic, whether you are a casual, full-time, or unit coordinator, or just a tutor or lecturer, communicating with the student right information at the right time, leaving no questions in doubt. It's very important. And also making sure that you are there, you are not just hiding behind the table and they can't reach out to you. You don't even know who is your a lecturer, probably, if you did not come to the class. So you need to make yourself visible, or apparent in that space, that you are getting emails, just maybe a single sentence: guys, tomorrow we'll be studying this interesting topic, please bring along your questions, or I would be interested to know from your experiences. So that communication, I think, important. And third thing, I would say that developing their own skills, academics' own skills, because learning has no ending, I believe. and there is always room for improvement.
Mhm.
I can certainly recall when I started my career, how I was and what I transformed. And probably after 5 years, I will be something else. And I think that is very, very important to learn every day in every possible way from your colleagues, from your another colleague sitting next to you, your student, your manager, anyone, and just showing them that you are interested in learning, not just whatever I know, I'll just shut the door and I don't want to take on anything else. So that is, I think, three key important things I can recall. But if someone wants to be in full-time position, of course, I would recommend them, they have to take on, thinking of having a PhD degree, because things being very competitive nowadays.
Yes. Wonderful. So
Yes.
those are wonderful recommendations, and I think they would do both the casual and adjunct and the full-time, because just because you get a PhD doesn't mean your people skills are going to be any better. So
No.
that's definitely something to develop. And the idea of having a growth mindset of continuously learning and trying to improve, you're going to be a great role model for your students, and it's also going to help you become a better teacher, better researcher, better whatever, project manager, program manager, whatever you want to be. So
And
wonderful.
especially just to add to the last point, because project management is evolving in every aspects, whether by the advent of technologies or by the different projects happening all over the world. So if you look around your area, you will see some construction projects going on or something going on. So I think academics should have that knowledge, because I certainly found that when you backed up your arguments with real life case studies happening just next door, they grab things quickly, they
Mhm.
associate with that. If you can give those kind of example, don't just rely on reading slides, that's too boring, and then we just came a long way. So and then so whenever I personally, when I go to the class, I look, when I preparing, I say, okay, in order to reinforce this point, which projects I can say. Maybe I'm not on top of everything, certainly not everyone is, but we can prepare that, to reinforce this argument, this project is that project would be helpful. And then whenever you talk about real life projects, students really get, okay, what's going on, let's pay more
Mhm.
attention. So
Yeah.
that's important.
Yes, I find they like hearing my stories too. So when I talk about how I got into project management, the kind of projects I manage, the people I've worked with, they are very interested in that because that's real, right?
Yeah.
So even sharing your own stories, your successes and your challenges, right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and it makes project management more real and less of like this vague academic concept that is hard to relate to. So I 100% agree with you on that. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate talking to you, and I'm sure people will find your insights incredibly interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this project.